Welcome to the Great Birth Rebellion podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Melanie Jackson. I'm a clinical and research midwife with my PhD, and each episode I cast a critical eye over current maternity care practice by grappling with research and historical knowledge to help you get the best out of your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. Welcome everybody to today's episode of the Great Birth Rebellion podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Melanie Jackson, and today we are talking all about doulas. It has been too long since we've had a conversation about doulas, and I've invited Poppy Child here. She is a doula, hypnobirthing practitioner, and childbirth educator, and today we're going to learn everything we possibly can about doulas, what they do, how they can help us, how much they cost, how to find one, and heaps more. Poppy, welcome again to the Great Birth Rebellion podcast.
Hello. Great to be here once again. Always smiling seeing you, Melanie.
So, kick off. You're a doula. I guess my first question was, can anyone just call themselves a doula, or is there like doula school that people go to?
Yeah, so we do go to doula school, but you're right in saying that anyone can legally call themselves a doula. So it's well worth asking your doula where they were trained if that's important to you.
All right. So what do doulas do?
Okay, so a doula is someone who provides you with emotional, physical, informational support during your pregnancy and your labor and birth. And the beautiful thing about having a doula is you then have continuity of care, which you might not otherwise have, depending on where you are. Here in the UK, it's very normal to see lots of different midwives over your pregnancy. And so it's quite hard to build a relationship. And also, you don't know who you're going to get on the day. So there is that thing of someone who really can understand you as a person, your wishes, your hopes, your desires, your fears, and give you that tailored, warm, familiar support that you need as a pregnant woman. I would say I wish everyone could have a doula because they really make a difference and they can make a statistical difference. So you are less likely to have a cesarean. I think it's 36% less likely just by having a doula present. Less likely to have major interventions, and more likely to perceive your birth as a positive experience. So we really do make a difference.
Certainly the research on doulas shows that women are far more satisfied. They feel more, listened to and heard during their labor and birth. They need less pharmaceutical pain management and less likely to have a cesarean section. There's a lot of great research about how that one-to-one care makes a difference to ultimate outcomes and also intervention rates. One thing that I think about though, and a lot of women say to me, well, how do I find a doula? Who should I hire? And I'm really reluctant to give them recommendations because I know how dramatically different each doula can be, just like each midwife can be different and each obstetrician can be different. There's a very individual flavor to clinicians. So how should women interview doulas to find the best fit for them?
It's a fantastic question. I am also asked, who do you recommend? And I'm reluctant to give a recommendation because I don't know the woman and I don't know if they're going to be a good match because we're all so different. So I would say, on a practical level, you want to find your local directory or perhaps look on Instagram. That can be a great way to find doulas nowadays, or your local directory and search radius and then find the list of doulas and then look at their profiles, look at their website, see which one is kind of speaking to you. And then you want to set up at least, I would say, 3 interviews because you might think that you found your doula and then you have another interview and you go, wow, actually, this is the person for me. Then you'll be invited to a chemistry meeting, which is usually kind of, half an hour to 45 minutes over Zoom or in person. If you want that in-person contact, I'm sure the doula would be happy to meet you in person. And then it's about, number 1, paying attention to how you feel in their presence. That is key. I also think that the doula relationship is like love at first sight. And if it isn't, they're probably not the right doula for you. And that might feel controversial to say, but I would say that my connection to my clients is instant. I don't offer second meetings because if you need a second meeting, I'm not your person. It is something that you feel quite viscerally, instantly. It's a connection that you have, which you can't really articulate why, but it's that instant connection that you feel safe in their presence. You feel a connection. But then I would say, you have to have a list of questions that you want to ask them, because that will give you a picture of how they operate, their philosophy to birth, which will give you more information, which will help you make your decision. So I've got some questions to share with you that will hopefully help your audience. A really good question to ask is, talk me through the first 10 minutes of you arriving in the birth space. I'm having contractions. What do you do? And that will reveal to you their kind of preference in terms of the way that they support. So they might say things like, I would give you counter pressure or positive affirmation. But even more crucial to that, it will help you to understand how they are going to work with your birth partner. And I would say that is one of the most important things. So this question will reveal to you, are they going to elevate your birth partner as the primary source of support, someone who knows you, loves you, has that deep understanding of what you'll need, or are they going to position themselves as the primary source of support? Whereas if you just said, how are you going to work with your birth partner? You'll get the answer that, you want to hear. Whereas when you ask that question, it reveals so much to you. So for me, planning for my second birth, which was last year, it was absolutely fundamental that my birth partner was the most important person in the room, because obviously I'm a doula. I know what I'm doing. I'm managing my contractions. I don't have fear. I don't need that kind of support in terms of positive affirmations, but I wanted my husband to be the kind of primary person that was in the room and that I wanted to remember. So this question can really reveal to you their philosophy, but also if they don't mention your birth partner in that story and in the kind of first 10, what they would do in that first 10 minutes, then, you could then ask a follow-up. And how would you work with my birth partner? Or is it important to you? The birth partner is the primary source of support. And then another really good question is, if I'm being coerced or if I am looking uncomfortable, what would you do? Walk me through what you would do. So that would reveal to you what kind of approach they have to the medical staff. Is it that they go outside of the room to have that conversation? I don't know what they're going to say, but it is a revealing question. If I doubt myself in labor, what would you do? Another really great question. And then what is the hardest part of being a doula? That can reveal a lot. How do they cope with stress? How do they reflect? And it's a deeper question that then enables a deeper conversation to happen, to emerge, rather than the kind of logistics. So those are the questions I would say write down and ask that will give you a really kind of rich understanding and a full picture of their philosophy and how they work with women.
And I love that idea of love at first sight. It's actually, as you were saying it, I'm like, oh, that's what happens when women come and interview me. Not all of them, obviously, but they'll get to the end. I often encourage my clients, I'm like, don't make a decision now. Go home, have a conversation together on your own. You can talk about me however way you like. And so often they're like, nope, this feels good. Let's go with it. Let's go. And it's like they just need to lay eyes on you, ask a few questions, and then they go, yep, feeling good about it. Let's do this. You go, oh, are you sure? Like, I don't want to,
Isn't it so interesting?
Yeah, I know.
It's
I
quite
think
surprising how quickly they know.
That's right. And so I always want to give them a chance to make a slow decision, because it's a big decision who you're going to be working with almost for an entire year, their whole pregnancy, their birth and their postpartum, and they're going to invest a lot of money. And this is a relationship-based care agreement, that we're entering into. We have to have a good relationship. We have to get along. We have to, trust each other. And you're about to make that decision right now. And so often they say, though, this feels good. Yep, this feels good. And they go with it. And I love that. I mean, that's how I make all my decisions. If, feels good, let's go with it.
That's it. And often, my clients will tell me on the initial Zoom, great, how do we sign up?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've had clients try and do that after the phone call where they went to just, and I'm like, no, we are definitely meeting. This is important. I don't want you to book me without first having, this conversation. So I think that's a great tip, to be intuitively tapping into how do I feel in this person's presence, your initial intuition on them, and then asking some poignant questions. I wonder, when you go to hospital with women, what role do they usually want you to play? Why are they taking you with them?
I think it really depends, right? So if I'm working with a woman who had a previous traumatic birth, then really they're asking me to protect and to try and make sure that doesn't happen again. I'm not a bodyguard, and I wouldn't say that I can be your bodyguard in labor. But I think doulas are unique in that we do have experience working in hospitals, and often we will understand the kind of unspoken rules of that hospital, of the system, the culture. Often we know the midwives, the clinicians. We're paying attention to things like the rhythm in the room, what's being said, the undertone, the patterns. And we can kind of see things before they happen. As a doula, I'm often watching out for when I feel as though potentially an intervention is going to be offered. So, for example, a scenario that I've been in one too many times is that the mum's had an epidural and then it's time to push. And there's a time limit, but that time limit is not being discussed with the woman, but I'm aware of it because we know different hospitals have different time limits. And so I'm able to say, and out loud, are you watching the clock? Is there a specific time you're hoping to have this baby out? We know that it's not their decision, but just let's get that out in the open, because I can see as time's going on, there's a little bit of people getting a bit uncomfortable pacing, and they'll say, actually, we really want to see the baby come out in the next 3 contractions. And there we have our piece of information that we need. Then I'll say, but if mum and baby are okay and she wants to continue, why not? And then that leads us into a conversation as, oh, well, yes, perhaps we could, And so if the doula wasn't there, if I wasn't there, actually the mum might not know that information, might get to the end of that time limit. And before you know it, help is being offered. I've had it where the clinicians are actually behind the curtain waiting during the pushing to see when the time is. There's been scenarios where an episiotomy is being recommended, but the baby's heart rate's fine. We just need time. We need space. And so as a doula, I would then stand by the midwife and say, look, it's stretching. And I smile and say, it's going to open. It just needs time. And I'm really warm and maybe a bit funny. And often I'm hugging the midwives at the end of a shift. I'm not there to kind of go, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. No, it's more encouraging. The midwife afterwards will say, wow, I'm really glad we waited. You were right. And it's a nice warm atmosphere. So as doulas, we know the rhythm, we know the patterns, we know what to look out for in a way that the birth partner might not be able to, because we have that experience. And we do reduce the chances of intervention. And that's why, because of those scenarios that I told you. And I've been in many of those scenarios where we've just managed to influence without being confrontational. You don't want that, because that then shifts the energy of the space. It creates adrenaline, which is not good for the oxytocin release. So a skilled doula will be able to subtly influence the scenario in a positive way, hopefully. We're not there to kind of, put anyone at danger, but if we can see that the woman just needs a little bit more time to dilate or to soften, then we will help to kind of allow that time to emerge, rather than how the hospital can sometimes be. Let's get this baby out. Come on, let's get this show on the road.
You can even help women to see, for example, if it's been 4 hours since the last vaginal examination was offered. And, certainly this happens when I go into hospital with my clients. We, as private midwives, we hand care over to the staff and we sort of become a support person in that scenario. And you're able to say, hey, just so you know, like in 10 minutes or so, I imagine someone's going to come in and they'll be curious about where your dilation is up to and they'll be wanting to offer you a vaginal examination. How do you feel about that? Do you want one? Do you not want one? Like, if you don't want one, I can go out there and say, hey, there's a vaginal exam coming up and actually she wants to wait 2 more hours, or she doesn't want one right now, or she's super keen for that. Like, as soon as you're ready, she's ready, So I feel like it can be a little bit of background management like that, where the woman can get on with labouring. You're aware of all the external factors that are going to play into her labour experience. You also already know what she wants. So, for example, if you're caring for a woman and she's like, I 100% want an epidural when I'm 7 centimeters, or whatever her request is for her birth, or absolutely do not let them give me an epidural, or I definitely want to get in the bath, you can navigate that for her. So if you arrive and you say, right, well, if you want an epidural at 7 centimeters, you're going to have to accept a vaginal examination so we know where you're up to. And so she might be really invested in regular vaginal examinations, discovering when she's reached that point, and then you can navigate like that with the staff. She's super happy because she got everything she ever wanted from her birth, and you were kind of working at that in the background. And alternatively, if a woman wants a water birth, right, I'm going to fill up the pool, I'm going to dim the lights, I'm going to make sure the midwife is aware that she wants a water birth. There's just all of this kind of project management at play.
Yeah, it's the invisible work. I like to call it kind of the invisible work that goes on in the background. So that's really interesting. So you almost become a doula when you go into hospital because you can't operate clinically, right?
Well, so some midwives can get visiting rights at certain hospitals, but it's individual hospitals have individual scenarios, and each private midwife has to navigate how to access that hospital. They all have different processes. I, first and foremost, have always been a home birth midwife for 17 years. I've never worked as a hospital midwife. So for me to apply for visiting rights at a hospital feels so foreign. It would be like saying to a hospital midwife, right, you now have to do everything at home with none of the stuff that you're normally used to. I just don't feel like I could function that capacity. So when I take my clients into hospital, I become a support person, correct, like a doula. I'm not supposed to provide any midwifery clinical care. All of my work turns into doula work.
Wow. So you're well aware of what I'm talking about, where you're watching and you're observing. Because often midwives in the hospital will be looking at the computer, writing notes. There's a lot of kind of stuff they need to do, note-taking. And we can be with the woman, paying attention to the rhythm of the room and being in that hold space, observer mode that will just pick up on things that the birth partner won't know because they don't have the experience. And the woman shouldn't know because she's in labor land. So it's that thing that we can't, it's really hard to put into words what we do, but I like to think of it as the holding space and the awareness and the invisible work.
Well, and you mentioned it earlier, is that I feel like a doula really frees up the couple to labor together and you're managing everything else. And so, if I think about the times where I've had to slip into that role, the woman is laboring, her partner's right there. I'm thinking, okay, how can I get that birth ball in here? I'm going to move that bed out of the way and put the mat down here and make sure she can get to the sling. Oh, her cup's empty of water. I'm going to make sure that's right next to her. So he doesn't have to leave to do anything. He can stay right with her and she has his support or her partner's support right there. And all the other stuff is in the background, but even looking after them. So like, hey, do you need a snack right now? I'm going to grab a cup of tea. Do you need one of those? Turning down lights when people flick them back on. If she says something like, oh, I wouldn't mind getting in the bath, you're like, it's okay, stay there. I'll turn the bath on. Making sure there's pillows under her knees, just all of that really practical stuff. Or let's say as well, the partner's trying to massage and you've seen this before too, I can guarantee it. he's doing his absolute best or she's doing her absolute best to massage in the right spot. And the woman's like, no, not there. No, nah, don't. And then, you're like, I know exactly what she wants right now. So you go in and you're like, okay, here's what I was doing before. She really liked it. Try that. And it's just a matter of giving a little bit of direction. Boom, he's back in. She's happy. And you're like, great. So I feel like it's a really complementary role to the support people that she already has.
Yes. Yes.
And you're
yes.
interplaying between that unit, the parents, and the system and the room, and the resources that are available. And you're just like, you're integrating all of that in caring for the woman.
Oh, you know what? Listening to you, I haven't doulaed in over a year because obviously I had my baby. I've been on a bit of maternity break, and it just makes me miss it so much. It's a wonderful role to be able to support women and witness birth and be there. I think the really important thing for me as a doula, and something that I think is really important to women, is that they remember their partner as the face and the feeling and everything, because ultimately it's them, it's their lives, they're the parents. This is a huge transformative event in their life. And exactly what you've been talking about, that's the role of the doula. We're just kind of, we're doing stuff and not doing, we're holding space, but we're working around this thing that then makes it warm and safe for that woman to labor and for that birth partner to be solely focused on the woman. And that then makes that experience so rich for them. Whereas perhaps if we weren't there, the birth partner might be distracted with trying to do all of these other logistical bits. So it's that thing around the birth that we do. I don't see really doulas as the thing in the center of the birth. And maybe sometimes the woman says, actually, I want the doula to support me and I want the birth partner to do the logistics. But I'm yet to meet that woman. When I've done the antenatal prep and I say, look, I'm here to facilitate your experience as a couple, that seems to be the thing that the women want most, is they want to feel loved by their partner. They want their partner to feel confident in their role as a birth partner, which is what doulas can help with as well. So we're by no means replacing them. And I'm really, really passionate about that. I've been to births where it's romantic and it's like, I'm going to leave the room because this is just oxytocin. The woman is swaying and it's just like so much love in the room where I feel like, I'm just going to exit now because this is just beautiful and this is deeply yours. Not all births, but with the right environment where they feel safe, it can be a love act. It can be wonderful.
It is so lush sometimes that you feel like, do they remember that I am here and witnessing all of this? And you feel like, oh, I'm just going to turn around. But birth can be really passionate and it's such a privilege to witness it, and that they feel so comfortable with you in the space that they feel free to be so connected during birth. So I'm hearing then doulas fill a lot of roles, and I imagine that they can morph and change into what the woman needs them to be in particular moments. And that a really important element of having a doula is that they meet with you first to fully understand what you need from them.
Yeah.
And then, I guess it's the doula's job to work out how they can provide that.
Yeah, it's very intuitive, I would say, the role of the doula. A skilled doula is totally intuitive and is judging things moment to moment, because every woman is going to labor differently. They need different things. They want different things. I would say another little tip I have is that in your antenatal meetings, it's really important to break the physical touch barrier. So if your doula's never touched you before, and the first time she's touching you is in labor, it can feel unfamiliar. When someone touches you for the first time, you feel something. So actually with my clients, I will start with a hand massage whilst I'm coaching them, whilst I'm talking to them, and just see how that feels. Then I might do a back massage, and you're not saying, right, I'm going to break the physical touch, right, here we go, because that's just awkward. But can I just give you a hand massage while I teach you this breathing technique, or a shoulder massage? And then I'll check in, how does that feel? Do you want a bit more pressure? And before you know it, you're now kind of moving into a different realm where you are closer, you have touched, you have had that connection. Whereas if your doula's never touched you and they're placing hands on you, it can feel different, unfamiliar.
Well, you're learning so much about each other because you've got to help the woman when she's in a very vulnerable scenario and where you can't be navigating that at the time. I guess you would work out if they're a hugger. Do they want a hug? Don't they want a hug? What words do they need to hear? What words don't they want to hear? I just think there's so much preparation that can be done ahead of time so that doulas can properly serve women in the way they want to be served. And I think that's a unique role to fill because it's not a clinical role. It's a much more it's a quality. It's a quality role.
I actually don't think there's such a thing as training to become a doula. I think the skills are so innate. You are a doula or you're not. I really do think that you can learn things and you can pick up things about how to work in the system. You can spot patterns and things like that, which will hopefully make you more skilled. But those caregiving qualities, that ability to hold space, hold time in your hands and really be there is something that is natural and innate as a person. So for me, when I first started to doula, my first birth was a deeply challenging birth. It was actually a stillbirth, which was my first initiation into doulaing. But we knew it was possible because the baby had a trisomy 18. And I knew I would be able to help the woman because, again, these skills are innate. I didn't feel like I needed to have a whole bunch of experience to be able to walk this path with her. I just felt it and I knew. And of course I had my, gosh, should I really take this on for the first birth? Isn't it too much for me? Am I skilled enough to hold this woman through this huge, life event? But it is that deep trust in those innate skills that we have as doulas. Every doula who's listening will agree that they just know that they are a doula.
I just had a thought as you were talking that it's entirely possible also that a doula could sabotage your birth. And I've seen doulas who have a lot of ego in the space and sort of throw their weight around and get really narky with hospital staff. And then all of a sudden the relationship between the doula and the people trying to care for the woman is really grated and tense. And then that translates through the birth space. And I want to call it out because I think doulas are incredible. And certainly the research on having a doula with you shows that they can be so beneficial. But then there's this shady side of, potential trauma and aggression from some doulas. I don't know if I'm sort of articulating it right. Please, yes.
Can I say something? Ask your doula, what was your birth experience like and how does that inform your work?
Yeah.
If they had a really challenging birth experience and it was traumatic, and they said, that could also be quite revealing because there are doulas who have had very difficult births who are in the mode of trying to save. They don't want their clients to have the same. And immediately, what kind of energy is that? Defensive.
Well, they're coming in defensive. They're also coming in as a trauma response and almost trying to heal they've become a doula as a kind of redemptive act for themselves. And it's less about giving women the type of birth that woman's asking for and more about trying to give them the birth that they wish that they had themselves. And then potentially if they're holding on to big feelings or anger towards medical staff or a particular facility, that could come out in those scenarios.
Have you worked with doulas like this?
Not personally. I mean, kind of. The doulas that I work with, obviously women are hiring them to come for home births. And the majority of doulas that I've worked with I know because they're the ones in my area and I'm comfortable with. But then I hear down the grapevine of some other doulas in other areas and at certain hospitals where they get a reputation for being a certain way. And then the staff, as soon as they see that doula come in with a client, immediately their reputation precedes them. And I just think does a disservice to the woman because the staff is immediately frightened. It's like they're not working together as a team, that they've set up some kind of battleground that the doula feels like they need to fight for this woman, but it doesn't go that way. It doesn't work out that way because there's so much tension in the room now.
Yeah. It's a sad reality. And I think the really sad thing is that, it could possibly lead to doulas being banned. Who knows? Like if it does sort of become a really big thing, then you can imagine that if there's enough midwives who say, hang on, I can't do my job properly because of this, that would be a really sad thing, because not all doulas are like that, in the same way that not all midwives are coercive, not all clinicians are coercive. So it's the same kind of issue that we have in the doula community, is that, yes, you will find doulas who are acting like bodyguards, who perhaps haven't dealt with their own traumas, who are defensive. So then again, in the same way as it's up to the woman to navigate the system, it's up to the woman again to ensure that she's choosing a doula who is operating from a space of trust, and who isn't dealing with their own traumas, and who is able to work with the midwives and the system, and who maybe has a positive and warm energy that you need. But it's difficult. But I would say that most women would be able to figure that one out from the chemistry meeting, from the reputation that they have, from some research. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think too, women are excellent at sharing top tips and having conversations in chat rooms and all kinds of things that eventually, if you start to ask the women in the community about, hey, which doula do you think I should choose? Immediately recommendations start coming out. Women know as well. I think you're right. You can build it in intuitive understanding. And perhaps some women will hire a more aggressive doula for a purpose.
That's what I was just thinking.
Right? So the woman might think, I want someone who is robust and aggressive and full of just clout, who's going to go in there and just really advocate aggressively. That might be what you want in a doula, or you might want a quiet, soft, gentle presence who's going to try and smooth over as many rough edges as possible. So, I know I kind of came across as a bit poo-pooing aggressive doulas, but maybe there are women, that's the type of energy they want in their birth space.
Totally. Yeah. If you've had a really difficult birth and you're like, I don't want that to happen again, and I need someone fierce by my side, I don't have any trust, then if you sense that kind of energy, you'll say, I want that. Yeah.
So my question is, there's no doubt doulas are beneficial. They fill a role that nobody else can fill, I believe. But, doulas are a service and women have to pay for them. So I'm curious, what are women looking at here? What's the financial investment if you're thinking of hiring a doula? And is there a ballpark of how much money do you need to put aside for this investment?
Yeah. Investment. I'm glad you used that word, because it is an investment in you, in your future, in your birth, in your baby, in your connection to your partner. And it's possibly one of the best investments you will make if you make the right decision around the doula. So I can only speak to the UK, obviously. So here in the UK, you will be paying around anything between £800 and £4,000. And that depends on the skill level of the doula. You can also ask for payment plans. So lots of doulas will accept payment plans. Some doulas would even, look at reduced rates. When I first started out as a doula, I would give reduced rates to the women who needed it. I even took on a birth for £600, So there are doulas that will do that. And I would say that if you can invest in one, take up the payment plan if you need to. It will be a really good investment. And, it is a lot of money for some, but it's worth it. Think about how much your pram is. You can pay upwards, thousands of pounds for a high quality pram. Think about the nursery and how much you would invest in that nursery. Imagine you put that money and you maybe buy less premium products, or you save for that doula that then helps you to have a really great birth, which then impacts you forever. It's one of the best investments you will ever make.
I absolutely agree. I think investing in the quality of your birth is a lifelong investment. And certainly, if you're listening here in Australia and the US and elsewhere, women need to know they're probably up for thousands rather than hundreds of dollars. And so that's in your mind. If you're thinking, I want to hire a doula, how many? It's going to be at least a few thousand in order to hire somebody. The other thing that I've seen women do is some of the doula colleges or the doula training centers, they might have students who are training. Doulas, sometimes if they're getting qualifications, they will be told, okay, you've got to do 5 births before you're a fully fledged doula. So, you might be able to find a student who's just on their training, who's looking to support some women. Certainly if you're looking to save some money or if you really can't afford it, that's
such
an option.
A great point, Melanie. And just remember what I said is you're not getting a less skilled doula. They're either a doula or not. So if they have the passion and all of those innate skills, you're going to get someone great. Don't feel as though you're going for anything less than. One thing to really be aware of is that doulas are not medically trained. So ideally, we are complementing the role of a midwife, a clinician. We do not do things like catch the baby, cut umbilical cords, episiotomies, nothing clinical. That is absolutely out of scope. But what we do is provide emotional support, physical support, massage, counter pressure, affirmation, warmth, encouragement. But by no means will we be doing anything clinical.
Yeah, and that's why, doulas don't need to be regulated. They don't need to be specifically trained. There's not a unique skill set that must be attached to doula work. In the same way, for example, midwives, we have to have very formal training. There's a registration process. We're heavily regulated to make sure that we are doing our work safely and appropriately. And that's the reason why doulas don't need all this other legislative infrastructure around them, is that there's no clinical tasks being applied. So that could be another thing to ask your doula, is what do you see your role as being, clinical or otherwise? Because I know sometimes, and it might not be the case so much in the UK, but sometimes there can be a little bit of greyness where sometimes doulas overstep the doula boundary. So, asking your doula about, where do they sit on their role in a clinical sense could be a good question as well, to just make sure that
there's doulas that have been around 10, 20 years, worked with midwives, seen lots of things. But if you have a highly experienced doula who knows stuff, often, you could ask that question. But I think you would probably find that if it was a situation where they knew how to possibly do a life-saving movement or whatever procedure, that those experienced doulas may do that. I don't know. Obviously, if something were to then go wrong, that could be, result in them being sued or being jailed. So, again, these are questions you could absolutely ask.
Thank you so much for being with us, Poppy. That's been this week's episode of the Great Birth Rebellion podcast. We've spoken all about doulas, and I will put all the details about Poppy's work in the show notes so you can look into her further. See you next week.
Love it.
To get access to the resources for each podcast episode, join the mailing list at melaniethemidwife.com, and to support the work of this podcast, wear the rebellion in the form of clothing and other merch at thegreatbirthrebellion.com. Follow me, Mel, at Melanie the Midwife on socials, and the show at The Great Birth Rebellion. All the details are in the show notes.